Today we're going to look at Labyrinth, War on Terror, card by card. We hope you'll join us in exploring this amazing game. This is Legendary Tactics. So we did the first 10, we're on to the second 10, and so we'll lead off with Covert Action, a US 2-op event, where you can, on a roll of 4 to 6, shift an adversary to neutral. Thoughts from the jihadi side?
Yeah, so I mean, it can be a very annoying card to come up on you because, of course, there's going to be a lot of adversary countries, and it's going to. But if it's in my hand, is it a card that I'm going to be plotting? Not necessarily.
No, I think the luck element makes it a kind of a, in the U.S. hands. It's not worth taking the event. Pretty much, you need those 2 ops. But in the I mean, it would be in the jihadi hand. It's probably like a bit annoying, but you're not gonna. Yeah, I agree. You're not gonna plot that away. Like you're gonna just take the risk and maybe a country shifts to neutral. It can be. Upsetting in the sense that if you're close to an Islamist rule,
then all of a sudden you're set back, right?
Yeah, especially if on your play, let's pick Iraq for example. Iraq shifts from adversary to neutral, and then the U.S. player plays a war of ideas to shift it to ally. Now suddenly they can get troops in, and so it can potentially be a fairly impactful card. But I find in general.
Not so much.
The U.S. player's not going to play it, and because of the luck element.
Yeah.
And and it's not powerful enough an event to stress out the jihadi player.
No.
So,
speaking of not stressing out the jihadi, we move along to Ethiopia Strikes.
Yes.
Intervention against Islamism. So,
yes.
Here's a card I don't think I've ever had the effect be negative on me.
Yes, yeah, and that's because I mean, if you play Let's Roll, I mean, Somalia or Sudan, the odds of that actually falling to Islamist rule is pretty slim because
Very
they're
slim.
They're one resource countries. It's not really worth it.
No,
I mean, this is a great U.S. event if that's the case because
it's powerful, but it's
you
just
can
such a
undo a lot of hard work by the jihadi player, but
yeah.
In other scenarios, maybe Somalia or Sudan, if I'm not mistaken, Somalia begins with a besieged regime, which is the only real reason why the jihadi would even bother with it.
Right.
Sudan does not, if I remember correctly. So, for it to be undone with
and
this
I believe
card, I mean,
Sudan is only worth 1, right?
Yeah, and Somalia as well.
Yeah,
so
they're only worth 1, and they're so far removed from where the actual core of action is happening. It's not.
Yeah, it's not. But as I said, it's one of those very situational cards. If the American player is happens to find themselves with that board position, hey, it's okay. It does good, but. I'd much rather take the 2 ops in many cases.
Use them, yeah.
And as I said, most times it's so situational, the jihadi player doesn't have to worry about the event. Yeah. I mean, if Somalia or Sudan is under Islamist rule, this would be a card that might be worth a first plot.
Oh, 100%.
Depending on your hand.
If it was there, yeah. You don't want to lose that Islamist rule.
Yeah. But it's one of those things that is fully under the jihadi control. As far as that goes.
Yeah.
You can decide whether to focus on Somalia or Sudan, and knowing this card is in the deck might affect that decision. So
right.
Yeah.
Moving along to Euro-Islam. European Muslims search for a third way.
Love it. As a U.S. player, this can be a real helpful card. Because it is 2 ops, so you do sacrifice the ops for the event, but to be able to potentially flip Benelux to your side and potentially hammer the jihadi player
Benelux
for
is definitely
-1 funding.
Benelux will go to your posture side for sure.
Yes.
There's no potential there. That's happening. The other thing is you can actually really snowball the Islamist rule bit nicely to actually a nice end of turn play to really hammer the jihadis down.
Yeah, exactly. And again, you may say the best part about this card is from posture side of things is you can choose Benelux's posture, so you don't have to roll for it. And what's great about that is, let's say the world is kind of shifting against you,
and if you're hard if you're hard, you're going in behind the 8 ball on the roll anyway, so why not?
Yeah, exactly. So if the world is soft on terror, let's say it's soft 1 or even soft 2, and Benelux happens to be soft, when you play this card, you can flip the global war on terror posture to match your hard posture, or at least be neutral, and that can mean all the difference with your War of Ideas rules. So it can be timed well. This can be a great event, and the -1 funding does not hurt. So
no, it's a nice bonus. In fact, for me as the jihadi, that's the bigger deal.
Yes, yeah, in some ways, but again, I mean, if you're trying to do what I call the jihadi walk through Europe, where usually send a cell through every country to flip Europe mostly to soft, and cause a lot of trouble for the U.S. player who's generally hard posture at the beginning of the game. Yeah. Then this is something which is a counter to that, so it can be good. Yeah. But yeah, it's one that again, it situationally it might be one that the jihadi player would.
Now, if it's in my jihadi hand, it is definitely, you can definitely mitigate this event to your benefit. However, it's actually one I would consider plotting, depending on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, but I would say probably you're going to take the ops, and if you play these early enough in the turn, you have the opportunity to make up the funding loss. So it's not.
That's right. Yeah, it's not a breaker. No, not at all. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on to FSB, Russian Security Service on the prowl. So yes, and this is one of the defensive cards against those nasty. It's like Nest or CTR or whatever that can protect against the WMDs. So it can remove a cell. It can force the jihadists to drop the loose nuke, HEU, and Kazakh strain from their hand if they have them. The only way that, honestly, it's an okay event, I guess, but I would probably choose the ops most times unless I had some sort of inside information, because it's just such a risk to.
You're not gonna play it to remove one cell from Russia or Central Asia.
Yeah, I mean, the only time I would do that is if I'd played the next card, Intel Community, and I knew that you had one or two of those cards. Then yes, I would. This is a great event, and otherwise, removing a cell from Russia or Central Asia, that can be poor compensation for essentially 2 ops given up. I mean, it's okay, but that's assuming again that there's cells there. So
and cells that actually are like relevant, right?
Yes, like the only time I would ever feel comfortable playing the event if there were no cells in Russia and Central Asia is after the next card, which is Intel Community. And for the jihadi player, you can safely hang on to this for the end of the turn and play it for full ops.
This is pretty much 100% mitigate card for the jihadis. I would never plot this card.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Unless, and even if you play it towards the end of the turn, you won't have those cards in hand.
Exactly.
And
you can mitigate.
You can move your cells out of Russia or Central Asia.
Exactly.
Really
Take the ops first, move them out, and then let the event happen. Right.
So this one's going to be ops for both, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to Intel Community.
Intel Community. Now this can be good. I mean, you inspect the jihadist hand as a U.S. player, conduct a 1-value operation, which is generally going to be a War of Ideas or maybe deploying some troops to a good country or something like that. But the interesting thing is you may interrupt this action phase now to play an extra card. So you can actually play 2 cards in addition to the 1-value operation.
So you can do a really nice stack with this one.
Yeah, if you get this card, this is a great one to lead with, and it gives you a pretty good idea of what's going to go on. There's lots of opportunity to mitigate the cards that you see in the jihadist hand, and it opens up cards like FSB or CTR for playing them for the event because they're going to be effective. So
now I have seen you play this event many times.
Yes. Yeah, but the 2 ops, again, it really depends on the rest of my hand at the same time, because the one downside of interrupting the action phase now to play an extra card is, let's say if I'm in overstretch and I've only got 7 cards and you have 9 because you're at full funding, playing that extra card leaves me pretty vulnerable towards the end of the turn. I'm vulnerable anyway, but it can potentially give you a lot of free actions in a row. So, you know, but at least you have the choice. It's not mandatory. You may interrupt this action phase. So it does, you know, give you that option. But that might neuter that advantage. Is, you know, if you only have 7 cards and your opponent is 8 or 9, you're kind of setting yourself up potentially for a bad end of turn.
And this one, for the jihadi perspective, you can mitigate this as one of your last cards to play in the round.
Yep.
So there's no cards to look at.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I've often given you this event, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, just save it for the end of the turn. You give up a 1 value operation, which is, I think the 2 ops are well worth that negative effect. And if the American player is the last to play anyway, there's no advantage really to playing. Maybe there's a small advantage to playing that extra card before the, but you can always take the event second, so it doesn't really matter. It's like it essentially mitigates the effect entirely, other than the 1 value operation. So. So again, I would say for the jihadi, it's easily mitigated, and the U.S. player, can be a great card. Yeah. Given the right circumstances, especially if they have a full hand, like full 9 cards, then it can be great.
So, Okay, going to Kemalist Republic.
Kemalist Republic.
Kemalist Republic. There it is.
Yes.
The Turkish militarist secularism.
Yeah.
So
now what do you think about this?
This one's always just been kind of a curiosity to me. I don't. It's like one of those meh cards for me.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're playing Let's Roll or You Can Call Me Al. I mean, Turkey is, it's nice. It's a 2-resource country. It's great. I mean, if you can get it to good, great. But it's a little far away from the action. Yeah. And, I mean, it's helpful. I mean, it's not a bad event, but if I'm under any pressure at all, I'm taking the ops as the U.S. player. Yeah,
and it's like you say, it's so far removed from the main theater, you're not too concerned.
Yeah. I mean, if you happen to have good prestige and the global war on terror posture of the world is in your favor, this can be it could be an extra 2-resource country. And actually, in a funny way, the distance can actually help you in that the jihadi player has to really work to get there in order to plot or otherwise take it down from its potentially good status or fair status. So if you can, as the American player, make it fair ally, and get it to good governance, it can be kind of, because it's so far away, the jihadi player is probably going to focus elsewhere, and it's kind of going to be a safe little bastion of good governance there that you can use.
Well, this brings us to the next card, which is King Abdullah.
Yes.
The Hasmiti Muslim alternative. Now, this card is annoying.
Yes, this is better than Kemalist Republic.
100%, because there's actually 2 bonuses to it as well.
Yes. Now, Jordan is a 1-resource state, so it's not like, it's okay. I'm as a U.S. player, I'm happy to have it at fair ally.
I think you're much more intrigued with the prestige and funding change, though.
With the what? Sorry.
You're much more interested in the prestige bump and the funding drop.
Yes. So this is a great one to add to the end of the turn, to either offset the prestige loss for having a Islamist rule country out there, but also having Jordan at fair ally. If I'm not mistaken, Jordan is adjacent to Gulf states, so it could be potentially easy to get to good, but it doesn't. It's a 1-resource country, and it doesn't really go anywhere. It leads to other 1-resource countries like Lebanon or something like that. So. It's okay. I'm happy to have it. I'm happy when the event is played by the jihadi player, and it can be a good card as the U.S. But I have to weigh the ops. The 2 ops can also be pretty valuable too. Yeah. So,
Okay, let's roll. Attack thwarted. Now, this card is always in the back of my mind when I plot.
Yes.
And I hate that.
Excellent U.S. event. Anytime it's your insurance policy. If you have an allied country or good country, and there's a plot, the fact that you get to draw a card and select a non-U.S. country's posture it can really turn the tide. Especially if
it can just burst the jihadi's bubble there.
Yes, and this is a card which can be like a kind of a pile-on kind of card. Like if the jihadi players at low funding, and then they get a plot down to boost their funding, and then you play that, you remove the plot, you get the U.S. gets an extra card, and they get a posture shift.
Yes.
It's a pretty deadly one. This is, if you can even hang on to this as a U.S. player,
it's not a bad idea.
Turn to turn, it's not a bad idea. The 2 ops are decent, but given the benefits of the event and the fact that it doesn't leave the game afterwards, that it makes it a pretty much a must hold and eventually must play for the U.S.
Yeah. Now, from the jihadi perspective, it's quite easy to mitigate. So that's the nice thing. You'll never have to plot that one.
Yes. In fact, you can have the event happen first and then use the 2 ops to plot.
That's right.
Afterwards, right? So very easily mitigated at any time. You don't have to, there's no specific time in your turn when it should be played. You can just make sure that you don't have any plots down when you play it. So.
Yeah. Okay, Mossad Shin Bet. Israeli security services.
I have never played this for the event, maybe once.
No, I don't think so either. Again, these countries are so far out of the theater. It's just for what we've played. It's not. They're not usually relevant.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if you, as I said, we talk about these being out of the theater, but I know one of the most fun games we ever had was one where it was a real back and forth, and we got well into the 3rd deck. And when you get into the 3rd deck in the base game, a lot of these cards and events that you don't really focus on typically in the 1st deck, suddenly the map kind of like just expands because just more events happen, and suddenly other countries become part of the scope of what you're focusing on.
Yep.
But that said, I mean, it's great if for whatever reason the jihadi players piling into Israel or to Jordan or Lebanon, both of which are, well, Israel's maybe for some special event effect, and Jordan and Lebanon are one resource country, so I'm not going to stress about them
piling into those 2 countries.
Yeah. But I mean, but it's great. I mean, if you try and do a major jihad in Jordan and you happen to have this card at that very moment,
it's a genius card.
It's amazing. But it's so situational, and it's
You're
not
definitely
one that's
using
worth
ops,
holding
and
onto.
I'm definitely using the ops as well. So
it's one of those very super situational cards, and I can't think of very many instances when you'd ever use it. But
no. Okay, moving on to Predator.
The last one for today, Predator.
Drones deny extremist sanctuary.
Yes.
So this card it's like a little fly in the ointment for me. I'm like, okay, fine, take a sell.
Yep. Yeah.
I generally let you have this event because usually there's worse events I need to mitigate with the plot. So.
Yes, exactly. It's like Special Forces, except it's a little better in that Special Forces has to have troops next door or in the same space. So it's better than Special Forces in many ways. But
yes.
I mean, I'm again, it's for the U.S. I'd probably take the ops probably 60 or 70% of the time. But it is nice to, for example, break up a potential major jihad roll. When you've got your 5 cells clustered and I play that, it just delays things a little bit, might buy me some time so I can get other stuff done. But generally, probably 60, 70% of the time, I'm just taking the ops on this one.
Right. So if you want to see the next 10, stay tuned. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe. This has been
Legendary Tactics.